The ancients tell of a story that one day Apollo, who was said to be the god of the sun, came across Cupid, the son of Venus. Apollo mocked Cupid for his short stature and then proceeded to make fun of Cupid's bow and archery skills. Apollo called Cupid's bow a toy and compared it unfavourably to his own bow. "There is no way," said Phoebus Apollo, "with a bow like that Cupid would have been able to slay the monstrous Python as Apollo had done." Cupid was enraged by this mocking from Apollo and fixed upon his revenge. When Cupid later saw Apollo walking close to the nymph Daphne in a forest, he drew 2 arrows from his quiver, one fixed with a golden tip, the other with a dull lead tip. Cupid shot Apollo with the gold-tipped arrow and Daphne with the lead one. The gold arrow arose in Apollo's heart an irresistible desire for Daphne, but the lead-tipped arrow afflicted Daphne with a deep repulsion for Apollo. Apollo turned to Daphne and begged her to be joined with him. Daphne, however, feeling a deep revulsion for Apollo, let out a shriek and turned tail and ran away as fast as her legs could carry her. Apollo let out a cry of surprise and immediately ran after Daphne. He soon closed the distance on her and called to her all the time to stop and to join him, as his love for her was so much he felt like his heart would burst. Daphne, however, was fixed on her course and ran even faster. Her legs bounded over the grass, her feet barely touching the ground. All the while Apollo was hot on her tail. They were approaching a river, and Daphne recognized the river as belonging to her father, Pianos, the water spirit. As they closed on the river, Daphne felt Apollo's breath on her neck and his hands grasping at her flowing hair. In despair, Daphne called out to her father, Pianos, to save her. Pianos answered his daughter's calls, and just as Apollo was going to grasp hold of Daphne by her shoulders, Daphne began to change. Her hair began to change into leaves. Her feet burrowed into the ground and turned into roots. Her fingers began to change into twigs, and her soft skin began to harden and turn into bark. Daphne was transformed into a laurel tree. Apollo circled the new tree. Just as he came round the front of Daphne, the bark closed over one of her eyes, the last remaining piece of her to be uncovered. Apollo ran his hands through Daphne's leaves. Even as in a tree, he found Daphne irresistible. He laid his hand on Daphne's trunk and felt her heart beating under the bark. As he stood with his hand upon the tree, Apollo declared that if Daphne would not be his wife, then she would be his tree instead. And this is how the laurel tree became beloved of Apollo. And this is why laurels were awarded as prizes for the Pythian games held by the Greeks of old in honour of Apollo.